We're time traveling. He took us ahead to the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a bunch of smiley faces there.
Okay. Now, Lee, I will give and this will be one of the few times I'll ever say this. Lee's a sharp, sharp guy. Teen at 13 is in human years. Teen in numerology is 10.
Okay. What, 10?
In
Oh,
numer.
because it's double digits.
Right. I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah. No. You're.
I mean, like I said, Pete, I was drawing a blank right along with you, brother. So I'm guessing, but
Yeah.
I trust Lee. I know he knows what he's talking about. He's not the kind of guy that's going to say something and be wrong
Right.
about it. He doesn't
Right.
speculate. If he's going to say it, he's going to probably be right about it. So,
Right.
all right. Yeah. So we'll just say, yeah. Well, it's the teens.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we move ahead into like a new decade, it seems like the past becomes more ancient history. Like talking about how time goes by. One day you look at your kid, or another 10 years is gone. But every time you turn on television, this obsession with the '80s, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like the '80s. There's a lot of shit happened for me in the '80s. That was it's like I find myself waxing nostalgic on the '80s a lot. That was my 20s. And
Right.
but I tell you, it's like it wasn't too long ago that the '80s seemed like yesterday. But now, as we move further into the future, the '80s is becoming ancient history.
It is.
Like,
It is. And what feels weird, Pete, is that's an era that I lived through, and
yeah,
it's like I'll tell you where a divide that shocks me is I think of myself as a reasonably young person. Then I go to work and I have a bunch of teenagers that work for me, and they weren't even alive when the space shuttle Challenger fell out of the sky, for example.
right,
You
right,
know,
right. Sure.
they were born, like in 1989. That was even after the Reagan administration. You
Yeah,
know,
that was like 87, 86 or 87. The shuttle, wasn't it? Wasn't
it
it
was
like
86 the
87?
shuttle. The
Yeah.
shuttle
Okay.
was in 86, and you figure a
Yeah.
lot of the
Yeah.
teenagers in today's retail workforce are
Right.
like born in 89, 90, got one born in 91.
Yeah. Right.
So you go think about that. And I'm thinking to myself, 91, fuck, I was almost in high school. It's
Mhm.
scary even to me. It's like you can't. Okay, here's okay. You want to talk about time flying fast, Pete? How long do you think you've known me? Take a guess in years. How long have we known each other?
Not that long, man. Really, I think I met you and Deb. I'd say around 2007. So what? 2 or 3 years?
Oh, good guess. Cause I couldn't believe. I was thinking about it today. It didn't seem like it's been 2 years, but it has. It's been
I
two
knew Deb
years.
longer. I
Yeah, you
think
knew Deb before you knew me.
I met Deb on MySpace around the time I put out "Ain't No Train" out of Nashville. When I released that would have been like that was '07. That
Hmm.
was 2007.
She just confirmed
So
it. 3 years.
yeah, three, and then I can't remember. I met her. I met you through her,
Hmm.
and I cannot tell you when that was. But
That was
yeah,
about
it
this.
hasn't been that long.
But yet
Hasn't
you
been
think
that
about how
long.
long a year is. Okay, you're
Hmm.
talking 12 months, 365 days. Okay, think about how long a day is sometimes. It's been
Yeah, it
that
just
long, but
flies.
yet it seems like it's the blink of an eye.
A
Time
day,
goes
yeah, a
back to the
day
whole
just,
time thing. Goes back to the whole time thing. Time is flying by.
and it's really man that puts a number on. Okay, there's space time,
Hmm.
and this is really getting heavy, which is different. And that's where you can actually get into time travel and shit. But it's mankind, it's humans that make calendars. But of course, so much is based on astronomy and astrology. I mean, I I read what I can about science and religion, and I'm I don't want to piss anybody off here because people of faith. The last thing I want to do is piss them off or make anybody think the way I think.
Right, right.
But a lot of religion is based on astrology. Christianity, for example. And the church has always fought this, and that's what the Inquisition was about. And people, free thinking was prohibited, and burn them at the stake. They're heathen, But the fact is, and it goes back to the Mayans. And Galileo was ostracized from the church because how dare for so long we thought the church dictated that the sun revolved around us. We're the center of the universe. We're the center of the sun. No, we revolve around it. Like we're in winter now. It's like it's horrible here in Illinois. It's freezing. It's bitter. It's brutal. And you think. When I was younger, I always think of winter as, winter came to us. Winter, no, really, we came to winter because we're on this little ball that's just spinning around,
right?
That's circling the sun. And why is it winter now? Well, because we're at that spot in the universe that we're the furthest from the sun than we are at any given time, and that's why it's so freaking cold. And when summer rolls around again, well, summer isn't really coming to us. We're coming to summer because we're closer to the sun now, and that's what so much of religion and time is based on, the lunar calendar and where we are at that moment in time in our little trip around the sun, basically, and that's what's so yeah, is a day. Is a year 365 days, or whoever decided that a day was 24 hours? Well, a lot of it is mathematically based on the rising and the setting and the season. So there's a mathematical. A lot of people, when they point to God, they use math. They'll actually use math to prove the existence of God, which is a formidable argument, but. I could go in a different direction with that,
right?
But you really, I think of life. Life, I could just look at it. We can all look at it. We look at it however the hell we want, but really, life is just one continuous long. The history of the universe could be just considered one long-ass day, but we break it up by going to sleep. Think about it. As I read about Keith Richards the other day, it's like,
right.
he had stayed awake for 9 days once. 9 days straight.
Damn.
And I'm sure with the help of some really good cocaine, but and I'm sure those 9 days where there's a surreal quality to them, where we break up our lives by basically sleeping, and you wake up and you start that whole day over again, and I think that causes a perception of time. I don't think I know. We sleep a third of our life. Think about it. That's kind of unfortunate. We spend a third of our life in a sleep state, doing nothing. But of course, if we didn't, we'd die. We'd be sick. Because our body has to heal, mend itself. It has to rest. But I think that forces an illusion of the speediness of time. Because when you're sleeping, you go to sleep. And it doesn't seem like you're sleeping for 8 hours. Nothing's dragging. You go to sleep and you wake up and you're like, holy fuck, I just fell asleep and now it's morning,
Right.
So there goes 7 or 8 hours or whatever, just boom, just like that, just whizzing by,
And you wake up and things in the world don't stop just because you fell asleep.
Exactly.
And especially living in the information age, you click on the computer and you see all these things that happened overnight. And I think it even adds more to the perception of time living in the information age because, you figure 20 years ago stuff wasn't available at the drop of a hat at your fingertips just because you wanted it.
I know. And I think in a lot of ways it's good though because we can make better use of our time. Like before the internet, if you wanted the answer to something, you'd have to get in your car, maybe drive to the library, maybe get on the phone and ask, call around. Now you can just Google it and you get that answer right away. Done. You can move on to something else. So we can get so much more done now,
We're so much more productive than we once were.
In some ways, it's frightening, though. It is. Like computers, it's a brain. It's a brain sitting on a desk. It really is a brain. It has the answer to everything. you know. And I think in some ways, you know, with all our ways of communicating, I think as a people we're becoming perhaps less sociable because, you know, you don't need people as much, you know.
I would have to agree with that.
You know, you